Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Okay, hi.
Hey.
This is attempt number 2 at this. We won't go into why it's the second attempt at this. It's October 8th. I'm leaving for the UK today.
I think you've said that on our podcast, but I know you've also said it in Forever Alone.
I didn't say when I was leaving.
But they should know if they've been listening that you have a 2-week trip planned. So that is happening as of the day that this is coming out. So Rachel's going to be, when is your flight? Are you going to be packed up and ready to go when this goes out? Or
it's not until like 10 o'clock at night. God damn it.
It's an overnight flight.
So no, I won't be sleeping for another 36 hours at the time of you listening to this. I don't sleep on planes.
You can listen to this interview episode if you're having insomnia on the plane or in the airport.
I'm just going to pretend to sleep. You know what I mean? I'm not going to try to stay awake. I'm just going to pretend to sleep or listen to yoga nidra or like whatever.
I think you can fool your body into actually sleeping.
You waste less energy if your eyes are closed and you're pretending to sleep than if you're struggling to stay awake for no reason. Like I will struggle to stay awake, but I won't be able to fall asleep. It's the worst kind of purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather just pretend because I think there is some benefit to like even just like letting your body and your eyes rest.
I think so. I think it's better than
nothing. This is not my first rodeo and not sleeping for 36 hours in order to get to Europe or the UK. So I can do it. I've done it before. I'll do it again. So this is a normal person interview and I have absolutely no idea what it's about. And I don't even think you do because at the time of us recording this, you haven't even talked to her yet.
No, we're recording the interview later today, but we're recording the intro ahead of time. I do know what it's going to be about though, because it's going to be about her relationship to her creativity. And it has been a bit of an on again, off again, and more recently on again. And there's been some things that she's learned about herself and about her process and permission that she's given herself that allows her creativity to come out in the way that it's meant to instead of how she thought it should. And I think I'm hearing a lot of my clients talk about wanting to be more creative, but not always knowing what to do or how to fit it in or if it's even worth it. Is that just kind of a waste of time when I could be more quote unquote productive? So I wanted to have a conversation about creativity and having a healthy relationship. And even if maybe you haven't always.
I would like to take a flamethrower to productivity, to the concept.
Can I please?
You know what I mean? And then I would like to take a nice like water hose and water the garden of creativity. And I want to sprinkle seeds and skip in it.
Well, that's what we're doing today. Okay. So you're going to enjoy this interview if that's a goal of yours.
Okay, so let me read Kara's bio. Cara Guilfoyle is a reformed workaholic, former pediatric ICU nurse, and sexual assault forensic examiner who sought healing and refuge in art. She's on a journey of tapping into her divine feminine and expanding her creative self. She's a highly sensitive INFJ, thriver, and side hustler, fascinated with cultural anthropology, horticulture, gardens.
Here you go.
And a love of all things witchy and woo. She has been informed by her nursing students that she is a Ravenclaw, which means she's an INFJ and a Ravenclaw. Hello, we could be friends, Kara. She is currently working as a nurse practitioner in a primary care clinic serving uninsured adults in Los Angeles and is considering getting a dog. Well, if you do that, then our friendship will be sealed, Kara. So if that's any sort of motivation. Also, kudos to Kara for being able to do the jobs that she has done, which is something a very small fraction of people would ever be able to tolerate. And as a highly sensitive, I'm sure that was very rough on her.
Yes.
It's a worthy cause, but incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And you can see how art is even more meaningful because there's this healing element to it beyond just the creativity.
Yes. Agreed. Mm-hmm. So, okay, well, I hope you enjoy, and I enjoy, I'm sure I will, this conversation.
Enjoy in the airport.
Wish me
safe travels.
Safe travels, everyone. And we will see you at the end.
Hey, Kara.
Hi, Kristen.
Hey, so I am very excited to bring you on the podcast for multiple reasons. I feel like, first of all, this subject of creativity, it keeps coming up all around me lately. I think it's partially because in our Patreon community, some of our members have been doing the artist way together as a group, and they've been sharing about it and kind of sharing their creative process. So I've been seeing a lot of that. It just keeps coming up in conversations with friends and clients. I don't know. I just feel like this is a timely topic for a lot of people right now. Maybe it's like a post-COVID thing. We're just kind of getting back into things that we put aside during the crazy pandemic. I don't know what it is.
Definitely.
But I'm thinking people want to hear about this right now. That's what I'm hearing all around me. So when I was thinking about creativity, I knew I wanted to talk to you specifically because I've just seen your relationship with your creativity evolve so much over the past few years. And I feel like your creative journey, it's been so relatable and it's been inspiring, I think, for a lot of people. So I'm happy you were up for sharing it with our Clarity on Fire people.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to talk about it.
Awesome. So I'm going to start by rewinding way back.
Okay.
Way back to when you were a kid. This is kind of fun for me because I don't actually even know this part of the story. So this is for my own curiosity as much as anything. But I feel like that's where we have to start because kids are usually so much better about expressing themselves through art and creativity. So I want to hear a little bit about how creative you were growing up, maybe when you remember kind of first being drawn to art or interested in that. Like, where did this all begin?
Well, art in my family was something that we were always doing. My mom ran a daycare out of our home, so there were always little art projects going on. My aunt and my cousin were artists. And so it was just part of our day-to-day life. When I was a kid, I remember doing all sorts of little projects. Like I would write little books and then make the covers and the back and like put them together. I would like design clothes and attempt to sew. And, my sister and I would like film ourselves like with the old cameras, those heavy ones. And just like we would create like these news clips and with dress
up. A little tripod.
We had the whole setup. Yeah. And, then we would like create commercial breaks in between, it was just awesome. Like, we would just do all these things. It was just part of our lives. It was just something that was encouraged as part of being a child. Yeah.
Well, and I love that in your family, that it was normal. I don't know that that's always true. So you had some really artistic people in your family who you were exposed to and who were probably excited for you to be creative and encourage you to do that. So your natural inclination didn't get stifled early on. In fact, it probably got, like you said, encouraged and drawn out more.
Well, to an extent, my sister was very much more considered the artist of the family. And so her journey as an artist, she went to art school. It was very much like she's the artist and, you do something serious, go be a doctor, which I did not want to do. Yeah. So it was and it wasn't. encouraged, and even for my grandmother, who wasn't necessarily an artist by trade, she got into fashion design school in New York, and it was, no, you can't go. So, I mean, it's something that, yes, it was there, and this is something you can do as a kid. And then my sister, who showed real promise with it, yes, will encourage you to do these things. But for me, it was not beyond that, like, oh yeah, this is a fun hobby, but this is not a career path for you.
Okay. Well, as a little aside here, I just want to throw out that I am not a fan, although it happens all the time. I mean, it happens in my own family where each of the kids gets like, you're the sports kid and you're the music kid and you're the art kid and you're the smart kid, right? Like they just, and so there's this comparison between siblings, which is usually not even between, like, it's not even from the siblings. It's from the parents or the family.
Right.
Like in my family, I was the nerdy book kid and my brother was the jock, the sports kid. And you take it on. You take on these identities, and then you see your own options through that lens. So a little aside for all the parents out there, let's just let kids be kids, and you don't have to be like, there's no labels on what you're good at. We can all be good at stuff. Okay.
Totally.
So interesting. Okay. So it was more, it was fully encouraged to be creative, to be artistic as a kid. It was like a kid thing, unless you were deemed by some adults somewhere, right? That like, oh, you're good at this. You can do this you can get serious about it. So art is either fun as a kid, or you can get serious about it as an adult. And if you don't, then you better get serious about something else.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't really know from my parents' perspective, what that was about, their version of that or their perspective of it. It just felt like for me, it was not something that was going to be acceptable as I grew up, even though like my art teachers were all so encouraging of me. And even through high school, I had one that in particular who had said to me, like, when you're done pigeonholing in healthcare, turn back to art. So, I mean, it was something that like I felt from a certain side of my life was being encouraged, but for as far as my parents were concerned, it was not okay, to go that route professionally. Like it was more like you need something stable, you can make money, and you don't want to be a starving artist. It's okay if my sister does that, but it wasn't necessarily okay for me to do that as the oldest sibling.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. So, and that was coming from, it was coming from love, right? They just wanted to make sure that you were happy and safe and secure and had the resources that you needed. So all of the encouragement that you were getting artistically and to do something quote unquote more stable, all of that was coming from this place of love and care. But it's confusing as you're growing up and trying to figure out what to do with yourself in your life. Yeah. When you feel torn and there's guidance coming from all directions. And so at some point, whenever you felt like you were kind of grown up, right? Maybe this was in college when you had to choose, what am I going to major in? Or maybe it was even before that, something shifted. So you felt more open to be creative, to play in the artistic world in whatever way struck your fancy as a kid. And then you had to get serious about something. So tell me how creativity changed in your life when you quote unquote grew up. Where was the turning point?
Well, I started getting more pressure in high school to take more science classes, less art classes. And, I rebelled against that for sure. I was still like, I'm taking my art classes. Oh, I got into a guitar class. I can't help it. They won't let me into the AP history class. Sorry. Those kinds of things. And then, as I got older and school got busier and, I went from college where art was still very much a part of my life to grad school where I just stopped having so much time. I mean, I had zero time, like in between working and going to school and doing clinicals, it just, I didn't have time or I didn't make the time for it. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you're talking about this because I think that is, from what I hear from clients and just, friends in general, that's probably one of the number one reasons that creativity gets put on the back burner. Time. The number one thing. Now, we can talk a little bit later about it, if that's totally true, or if time is sometimes more of a mask for fear. Sometimes it's just true. Sometimes, you're taking classes, your schedule got really full. As a kid, you had school and then maybe a little homework, and then that's it. You're not super responsible for stuff. Then you get older and you have more and more and more responsibilities, and creativity doesn't seem to get as much time anymore. It doesn't seem to get as much, it's not as high on the priority list. And I wonder if you could kind of explain why you think that was for you. I think a lot of people, they get away from creativity and their artistic selves partially because they don't know if they feel good enough. They don't know if it feels like, what's the point? This is not productive. There's so many more things I could or should be doing. There's so many reasons that get all up in our head or in our way and make this not something we devote as much of ourselves to as we get older. And I wonder what feels like it was the biggest barrier for you at that stage.
Well, part of it is definitely that feeling of, well, I'm not the artist of the family. I'm not good enough. So I shouldn't be spending so much time on this, even though, it was always something I still did here and there. I would even if it wasn't anything major, I would write, I would doodle, draw little pictures here and there, nothing super like a massive project or anything. But I think the bigger part of it was I was just feeling more and more tired from all of the other things I was doing, working so many hours, and the work I was doing was emotionally and physically exhausting in itself. So that also, it just, when it came down to it and I was that tired, it was like, I just want to sleep, or I just want to go out with my friends and have a good time. So those were the things I was doing in my off hours, as opposed to I'm going to take time for myself to reconnect with myself and do some art. Yeah.
So part of it was just exhaustion. I don't have anything left over. I don't have any energy left over to give this, even though I theoretically would want to. And then a little part of it too is, well, why am I going to spend so much time on this? This isn't what I'm going to do professionally because I'm not the artist in the family. So a little bit of that self-doubt or self-critical talk, that even if you did find yourself with a little time and a little energy, you might talk yourself out of it as well. Right.
For sure.
Okay. So that's some kind of would you say that was, we kind of started around college-ish time frame, but would you say that's kind of the, how it was playing out for most of your working years? I know when we started coaching a few years ago, that's kind of where you were at. You were, actually, this is funny. I went back through my notes from our very, very first coaching session. I think it was 2018. And one of the first things that you said was, I want to be more creative. That was one of the first goals that you said you wanted. So I knew that was right off the bat. And I know that wasn't even what we were talking about for a while there, but it was always in your mind. It was always this desire.
Yeah.
And I know too that your work did get really exhausting, heavy, emotionally heavy, time consuming. And you got to a place of, if not fully in burnout, you were definitely flirting with some burnout. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about how that phase, when you were so busy and it just took so much out of you just to do what was required to do your work, to, also keep life going and like try to, eat and pay the bills and like all the normal things and like have a bit of a social life, like how your creativity, how your relationship with your creativity suffered at that stage.
Yeah. Well, I took on so much extra work. I was a bit of a workaholic, and, I started working extra hours at the sexual assault clinic. And those hours are typically 5:30 p.m. till 8:30 a.m., and you're on call. So you can be there all night. You can be there for few hours, and you don't know what time you're going to be called in to go. So, my sleep was extremely disrupted. And it started seeping into my day-to-day life, because when you're holding space for trauma that much and you're doing it when you're exhausted, it will eventually take a toll. It's inevitable. Especially when you're not replenishing yourself or have the opportunity to replenish yourself. And I was just working myself to the bone, so,
so physically you were exhausted. Emotionally, it was, it was just a huge toll, and probably very satisfying in some ways to be that person who can, be there in a traumatic experience for someone else. But you need so much replenishing in order to keep doing that. So the emotional toll was running low, and physically you're not getting enough sleep. Your schedule's all over the place. I had forgotten that it was like 5:30 p.m. to 8:30. I think I blocked that out of my mind for you on your behalf, because I was like, that's just unimaginable to me. So no wonder. Probably just getting by day to day and keeping your energy up and trying to do good work. That was pretty much all you had energy for. And that creative part of you got shut down a little bit.
Oh, for sure. And I was doing that in conjunction with another job. So it wasn't even just that. Like, I was physically killing myself, I didn't have the space for it whatsoever, to do anything else. Yeah. It's like total survival mode. Yeah.
Total survival mode. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, so when did, what had to shift for you to even remember that part of you that was craving more creative expression?
It was just like internal, like that niggly feeling that you get, that just keeps coming up. It's just something that kept coming up for me, that internally and externally, I was getting a lot of messages from other people or from, whatever, like creativity is like your way out kind of thing, sort of, and just like this desire of like, oh, I want to do something artsy. And like, I would be looking at, like, there would be flyers for art classes that would pop up, and, things like that are just like all around me and internal. And, it was just this sensation, I guess, that I need to do this,
that little part of you was like tugging at your shirt sleeve, being like, hey, I'm still here. Don't forget about me. And all these little synchronicities, it wasn't going to let you forget that that's really not who you are. You are a creative person at your core. And that part of you was getting louder, it sounds like. Especially the more you were disconnecting from it out of necessity because of survival mode. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious. This is like slightly off tangent of the story itself, but I'm just making this connection in my mind of, you were experiencing a lot of people's trauma, and you were physically burnt out, exhausted, emotionally exhausted, and part of what I imagine the tug of creativity to get you back to pay attention to it was because that's just who you are, right? Part of it was just you're misaligned, and I want to bring you back into alignment with your creative self. And I have to also think part of it is that art in and of itself is so healing. So for your own sake, as well as just for potentially the healing of others, how do you find healing in art personally, or how do you find art to be healing in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question that I can go in so many directions with. Well, I mean, it's an opportunity to feel into my emotions in a safe space, and when I was working in pediatric ICU, that's such a high stakes environment. And art gives me an opportunity. It's not high stakes at all. It's low stakes. I can do whatever I want, and it's freedom in so many ways, because art and creativity don't have to be one specific thing. So it just gives me more space to breathe and to slowly let out those feelings and the processing of what I was witnessing and helping support, other people through. It takes time to work through that. And I'm a very sensitive person. So, it allows me to process those memories and the pain that, I sometimes take on from some of those experiences.
Sure. Oh, that was so beautifully said. I think that's maybe one of the best descriptions of the relationship between art and healing I've heard, which is, there's so many emotions that get bottled up in life in general. And how often are we really creating space to process them and allow them to come out in a healthy way, in a safe space? And that is kind of that's the healing work of art, of creativity. You just allow emotion to bubble up in beautiful ways, even if you have no idea you don't have to know what you're going to do with the art. That's not even the point necessarily. It's about, I have to get this out some way. And this is one of the healthier ways to feel fully expressed, when life doesn't always give you a chance to do that unless you create it for yourself. So I love that you described it that way. It just makes it creates even so much more meaning. I mean, art itself is such a beautiful part of human existence, frankly. Like life would be so much more boring without it, but it would also be a lot less healthy without it.
Yeah.
Like, we need these outlets. So, okay. So you were recognizing, I need more of this. I need to get back in some way. Like the itch was getting stronger and you're like, I got to scratch this. So how and in what ways did you start to prioritize creative time again?
Well, it kind of became apparent, like I need a space for art in my home. Like, where am I working? So it kind of started as like, okay, I'm creating this art area, and like I'll go inspire myself and go to the art store and look at supplies and things. It started there. It started with little things. The artist way definitely came into my sphere. And just like I would start art classes here and there, and little things like that were the beginning.
Yeah, you're like, first, I need a space. I need a space that physically shows this is a part of who I am, and this is the thing that I want more attention on. I love that. And it could just, I know for you it was more of a defined space, but it could just be a nook. It could just be
totally
a little section of your dining room table. This is my art space.
Exactly. Exactly.
My mom is a quilter. She's been that's like her creative expression. And she's gotten really, really, she creates like pieces of art that are in quilt form. But she started out having this teeny little desk behind the couch. It was like this little tiny space with just a sewing machine and like a few little boxes of fabric. And it's grown into my old whole bedroom.
Okay.
To go for like a quarter of the upstairs. It's now her art space. So it grows. If you give it space, it will grow. But you have to give it that space at first. I love that. And then just, it sounds like you were just seeing what struck your fancy. Like, I think I'll take this class. That sounds interesting. Or I think I'll dabble in the artist way and try some of those exercises or try some morning pages or whatever that looked like. And didn't have to start out making it into a big formal thing, just creating a little bit more space to play with this. That sounds
for sure.
Like the opening.
That was the opening. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely some blocks that came in there and the perfectionism that came in there that shifted things. But yeah, that certainly was the opening of just play.
Yeah, I'm remembering, I think you had sent me an email about this a while back where you're talking about your space and you're like, I made the space to paint. And then whenever I think about painting, I'm like, well, but then I have to cover everything because it's going to get paint on it. And then I got to mix the colors. And then it feels like this whole thing. And then you could try to talk yourself out of it, right? So even when you create the space, even when you have the desire, even when you have all the materials and it still feels like, but the procrastination, right? It still sneaks in. It
does.
So I'm curious. I know all creative people struggle with procrastination. That's not just a you thing by any means. That is like, I've yet to meet a creative person who doesn't struggle with that. So I am curious, what is your procrastination? Like, what's the flavor of your procrastination?
I was just reading that email I sent to you actually. And it's that little voice of like, oh, well, you're going to get paint everywhere. Like, so I just started fighting that back with that voice, like, okay, well, remember that drop cloth you used when you painted your wall? You still have that, put that down, and
until it has no more excuses.
Exactly. It has no more excuses. Put your bottom in that chair, like just sit down, parenting myself to be creative, like just put your butt in the chair, Kara. You'll be fine.
I love thinking of this like a parent, because think about a kid coming home from school. I don't want to do my homework. Well, I forgot my pencil, or my computer battery's low, or like they have all these excuses. And you're the parent. You're like, we're going to plug it in. We're going to sharpen your pen. We're going to whatever we have to do. Got to do your homework.
Yeah. There's no more excuses. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you, that's funny. We were both thinking of that instance.
Totally.
That story you were telling. But I wanted to bring it up because I know that's the dialogue. That's what everyone struggles with when they finally decide, okay, I'm going to do this. Then all the mental chatter comes in and tries to convince you why it's silly or it's messy or it's not productive or whatever. And you have to be a good parent to yourself. I love that that's become your approach to dealing with procrastination, because kids do it all the time. So just imagine you're dealing with a snarky kid.
Yeah, my inner child, she can be pretty like she's kind of a princess sometimes, like, oh, I don't want to get messy. Like, girl, get in there. Make one brush stroke. That's all I ask of you, you know?
Right. Okay, you get some in your hair, you take a shower. No big deal.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So go put on your paint clothes. Like, yeah, I have this constant conversation with my inner self of like, okay, come on now. Like, this is just silly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I know there's another block that you were struggling with that I think a lot of people are going to really relate to. A little bit of this might be side hustler problems too. So any of our side hustlers who are also creative are going to be like, yes, this is me. But I know you were getting caught up and hung up on needing to pick a project, but then getting sometimes bored of that or wanting to or feeling inspired by something else. And tell me a little bit about that internal struggle of having multiple creative interests and feeling like you should just pick one already.
Yeah. I mean, part of that too was like the procrastination on one project. Like, I'll hit a block on the project and I don't want to mess it up. You know, those kinds of internal dialogues that are happening that I'm afraid to ruin my art project or something. So yeah, when we talked about that, like, I don't know why I felt so strongly that I had to have like just this, I have to start with this one and complete it before I move on to the next. This is probably some programming from like my childhood, I assume, you know,
and probably society at large too, frankly.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You know, I just like am comparing myself to these masters of writing and painting and that kind of thing. And, you know, so I feel like I have to be super focused on this one project in order for it to be accomplished. And then I can move on. And yeah, so then we had that conversation and that really, really helped open up the idea of it doesn't have to be so rigid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And actually, that conversation that we had inspired, and I should link to this in the episode description, it inspired a whole side chat about why you can use, I think we were calling it the menu approach.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the menu approach. That
so tell me how
blew
that
my mind open.
Tell me how you would describe that in case that someone's not heard that other episode, which you should listen to every single Clarity on Fire episode. But if you haven't, we'll give you a break and tell you what we're talking about. Tell me how you would describe it and then how it was working for you.
Yeah. So the menu approach for me, my perspective of it is like, okay, I have, you know, you have your main entrees, right? Like, this is the main items that I have on my list that I can work on the menu. These are our features for the day. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, you want a little appetizer too. You want a little dessert. You want something else. You want to skip all that and just do happy hour. Great. You can do any of that. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's like, okay, I have this one big project that I'm working on that was inspired by my niece. It's a project for her. It's a present for her. So that's kind of my big menu item. And that's the one I keep going back to. That's my number one. And then from there, I have a couple other little projects that I work on here and there. And then when it's like, okay, you know what? None of this is working for me right now. I go back to the open ticket item at the bottom, create your own flavor sort of situation where for me, what that typically looks like is something super, super simple. You know, it's because I'm just like really procrastinating on number one, number 2 and 3 and 4 are feeling too stressful to do that right now. So it's like, all right, back to basics. So usually it's something like something a kid would do typically, you know, it's like really simple, fill in the colored lines, you know, really simple. sort of options.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad I had you describe it because I loved your description, how you actually related to a real menu. Like you can dabble in different entrees. And if you want to add an appetizer, if you want to go to happy hour, brilliant. Yes. And what I love so much about this is it's kind of relating back to our conversation about procrastination. What you were saying is when you find yourself procrastinating, there's all these excuses that come up. And you, like a parent would, systematically remove the excuses. And the menu approach ends up kind of doing that. Because if you're feeling uninspired by your main entree project that day, or if you're feeling a little bit blocked, if you're having writer's block or whatever, is painter's block a thing? Probably.
Probably.
Probably. It's the same process. And, or you're just not feeling it that day for some reason. You're feeling called to do something else. If you felt like you have to do this one project or nothing else, then the procrastination is likely to lead to no creativity because it's this or nothing.
Right.
But if it's, I don't know that I have the inspiration for my main entree today, but I still want to do something. So look at all the other choices. What am I up for today? You remove the excuses that were trying to take you away from creativity. So you still let it flow in whatever way it wants to flow that day. Which,
exactly.
It doesn't stifle the whole. It's still, if we're talking about this in terms of your relationship with your creativity, I feel like it allows the relationship to keep progressing and growing instead of shutting down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I was just, as we were talking about this, it makes me think of like water, and how it flows around the blocks. It doesn't get stopped by them entirely. It still moves itself around. So it's making myself more fluid in that way and open to other things that want to come up, because it might not just be painting that day that really is what opens me up. It might be writing, it might be drawing, it might be, I don't know, making a glass mosaic. I don't know. So I just have to allow myself to be open to these other opportunities that want to arise from my inner self, I guess.
I love that water visual. That's really good. And it's making me really think about this in terms of masculine and feminine energy.
Totally.
Because the menu approach allows you to be more in the feminine and say, what do I feel like today? What do I feel called to or inspired to? And it recognizes that you're not the same person every single day, and your energy is not the same, and your emotions are not the same. And so you don't have to put yourself into a box of how you express them creatively that day either. Whereas the more masculine approach to creativity would be, we sit down, we work on the same project every single day at the same time, and we do it until it's done. Well, that's not, I feel like that can work, I guess. I know there are some artists who do that. I know there are some writers, for example, who they sit down and they write, and it's the same time every single day, and that works for them. But on the whole, I feel like creativity itself is a more feminine experience. And so we can structure it in a way that's also feminine, and that might make the whole thing flow more easily.
Yeah, I was definitely, for sure, I was definitely trying to go with that masculine mentality of like, yes, okay, so we're going to do this from this time to this time, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to get through it. That's what you're supposed to do, right? I don't know where I heard you're supposed to do it that way, but that's what it felt like anyway, is that's the right way to do it, or only way to do it. Yeah. So it just like blew my mind to be like, wait, what? I don't have to do that? Cool.
I'm so glad. And I've had people apply that to so many other things too. So you're allowed to use the menu approach in any area of your life that you want to.
Yeah, it really is great.
Especially
highly recommend.
Especially for my side hustlers out there. This is going to be like a whole new world for you.
Yes.
Give yourself a menu. All the things are valid. and you can even create your own on any given day and then pick from the menu. You're still going to be making progress. That's the main thing. So
exactly.
I do want to check in because you were describing before what it felt like when you were just in survival mode. And creativity was something that felt like, one day I'll get back into that. Or that was a fun thing I did as a kid. It just felt so far removed from what you had the time for, the energy for, the bandwidth for. And that felt, it didn't feel good. It felt exhausting. It felt unsustainable to cut that part of you off indefinitely. And you've really made a commitment to being more of your true artistic self and allowing that to come through. And it doesn't look like the same every day or every week. And I know that it probably happens in fits and starts, just like everything. But I think you could agree that it's a well-represented part of your life now. It's something that you
for sure
prioritized intentionally, significantly more. So tell me, how does your life feel different when you have a healthier relationship with your creativity now than it did a few years ago?
Well, I definitely feel a little bit more grounded and peaceful. And I feel that having the focus being shifted back onto creativity being in my life has opened up the opportunity for more of it to come in. And then, that being said, like the procrastination thing, that's always there. And there are definitely days or weeks that go that I don't do anything. And it's something that, I work through in therapy and fighting those battles of those internal blocks. Those are always there. I don't know that they ever go away, but just recognizing that this is an important part of my life that is meant to bring me joy and meant to enhance my life. Holding on to that is crucial. My mental health over these past few years has become the most important part of everything that I'm doing. And so knowing that art is a critical piece of that, it keeps me going.
Yeah, because you know what it feels like without it. And you feel, just the way you're describing that, the word that's coming to mind is you just feel more whole when this is a part of you. Yeah,
totally.
Wow. I literally just got a little bit of a shiver saying that. That's cool. And I also know that, like you were alluding to, the more you give time and energy to this, the more creativity shows up. And right after I asked you to be on this podcast, what was it? A day or two after I asked if you wanted to do this interview, you
sent me the very next day.
Was it the next day?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you sent me an email, and you gotta tell people what the email was, because it was just too funny of timing.
Yeah. So my friend had invited me to an art show that his friend was going to be an exhibitor in. And his friend was a retired surgeon. So we went, and his art is amazing. It's absolutely stunning. And I had the opportunity to chat with him about his process and his journey and, leaving healthcare to work in art. And then on top of that, I didn't even tell you this part, but it turns out his wife was also in healthcare. She's an RN, and she's working on a feature film now. So I'm not. Yeah. And like, we exchanged numbers. I'm actually going to have coffee with her this week, because she's working on a piece about healthcare disparities.
Wow.
So yeah, like it's just everything opens up. And then the other piece of that too, I wanted to jump back a little bit, but about the procrastination thing. In relation to this is one of the things we talked about during that session was having an accountability buddy. And so I have an accountability buddy with my friend who we went to grad school together, and our lives have kind of woven in and out throughout our time here in California. And so she's my art accountability buddy. So we'll just send each other messages of what we're working on. It's so just like gives us this space of just non-judgment to, yeah, this is what I'm working on. Here's what I'm having a block with, and we talk about other things too, of course, but we've made it a priority. And now her whole plan was to also, I want to leave healthcare. I don't know that I want to leave healthcare completely, but she wanted to leave healthcare completely. And she's now focusing entirely on art. And so, I mean, like, ask and you shall receive, almost in a way, like the universe will help you. Oh my God. Another thing I just thought about, I was having the conversation with the wife has this feature film coming out. We were sitting there. She quoted to me, The Alchemist. I'm like, what is it? Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on the quote. But of course, it's like how the universe will conspire.
Yes.
To create. Yeah.
All the world will conspire on your behalf or something. Yes, I forget the exact quote, but that's so good. I mean, you can't plan these things. It's more as you give yourself space to be more of a creative person, and then you slowly start to share that with people, then it starts to become not just a part of you, but almost a community. And there's so much healing in that too. And there's so much, like you said, accountability in having other people who have also decided, I want to prioritize this. There's so much inspiration finding people who have been in your field and then are shifting into a more creative life and career. And if you hadn't been willing to prioritize your art and then also be willing to tell people, hey, I'm prioritizing this. Hey, this is a thing that I care. This is a part of who I am. Then nobody would have invited you to an art show if they didn't know that was a part of who you were and that was a value of yours. So as you get more and more comfortable with that creative side of you and start to share it in little ways, it can grow into this bigger part of your whole life experience. I think that is such a cool, just example after example after example that you're sharing of how your connection, your relationships have evolved as a part of this whole experience too. So I love that. I love the idea of an accountability buddy. It works in so many areas of life. If you wanted to work out, get an accountability buddy. If you want to, whatever you want to do, it helps. But especially in creativity, because it's so vulnerable and you're likely to shut yourself down.
Yeah. Community, in any sense, is so important. And having that sense of community in art where I felt so vulnerable, but also alone. And like, I don't really have too many people to share this with. And, of course, my sister is very creative, but she doesn't work in the art field anymore. She's shifted her own path. And so like, we talked about her being an option for that. And it didn't feel totally right, but this particular friend kept coming into my mind, and it's strengthened our friendship, which is amazing. It's also helped me expand as an artist and creating more of that sense of community in other people. It's opened me up to feeling less scared about having those conversations with other people about their creative paths as well.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm so glad you found just the perfect person to be your kind of buddy in this.
Yeah.
And this so perfectly leads in. I wanted to ask you here as we're wrapping up, what are some of the things that you would, I don't know if suggest is the right word, but what would you want to tell people who may be feeling closer to the version of yourself from a few years ago where, I used to love being creative, but I don't have time for it anymore. And I'm just tired and I'm burnt out and I haven't prioritized it in a long time. if they're hearing this and this is rekindling that creative spark within them, what do you want to tell them?
Yeah, well,
beyond what you've already told them, which is already, you've shared so many good things already, but do you have any last nuggets?
Yeah, I mean, art is so important. And if it's something that you feel inspired to do, just start, keep it small, keep it simple, keep your expectations low for yourself at the beginning. You can't be a master right away. What's important is that you reconnect with that part of yourself, because that's truly, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed and a lot of heightened emotions, the best thing you can do for yourself is open that side door and let some of it out.
Oh, I love that. Again, we have to remind people of the purpose of art, because it's so easy to shift it back because it's just a fun thing. It's just a extra thing. It's like the icing on top. But sometimes it's not the icing on top. Sometimes it's the deep healing work. Sometimes it's the way to get you back in touch with you. So there's so much more value in this other than just making pretty things. And I think you've done such a good job.
It doesn't have to be pretty either.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It's true.
It can be, it can be messy. Feelings aren't always pretty. Yeah. So it can be messy. It can be, look at Jackson Pollock's work. That's not necessarily pretty, but it's there's a lot of depth in that. So
this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I know you are going to
having me
inspire some people to do some of their own creative work and to get back into it, and to start small and to use the menu approach and take the expectations off and parent yourself if you have to. I mean, you've shared so many valuable things that have helped you in your own creative process. So I know there's going to be some little nugget that is just what someone needed to hear. So I really, really appreciate you sharing this.
So.
And
a little bit at a time is enough.
Yes,
so
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. That's all you need.
No such thing as starting too small.
Exactly. You can even bring it down to kid level.
Yes. In fact, that's a great way to bring it down for anything artistic, to be honest. Kids are some of the best at this. So anyway, unleash your inner kid.
Yes, totally unleash your inner kid for sure.
Well, I can't wait to see where this creative journey keeps going for you. I hope you will keep giving me some sneak peeks into your art. And for anyone listening, I can attest to the fact that her entree project is beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you. It's progressed somewhat since I last sent you.
I would love an update photo at some point.
Sure.
So anyway, thank you so much. And I will talk to you later.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. That's it.
But I would love to hear people's reactions to this one. I'd love to hear comments, because I know creativity can bring up a lot of stuff. And I know it's also one of those things that we all tend to put to the back burner when life gets crazy. So I want to know how this related to people listening.
I also have some ideas about episodes we've done in the past that are directly relevant. And so that Kristen might have forgotten about, because we know that I am the oracle and repository of all memory here at Clarity on Fire.
Especially when it comes to podcast episodes.
I'm like the goddess of memory. Quick, someone who knows Greek stuff, tell me who that is, because it's like on the tip of my tongue.
The goddess of memory, but you forgot. Oh, that's so ironic. I know, right? I love it.
Well, Minerva was Athena in the Roman. You know what I mean? Like Athena, Greek, Roman. And like Athena was a goddess of wisdom, but I actually think there's a goddess of memory specifically. And her name is probably something like Memorous or something like that. Like it has like a Greek root, whatever. Sure. It's something probably.
Someone
like
probably knows who's listening, and they're so annoyed that
it might be
you're
Diana.
not thinking of
it. Thinking of, if she's listening, she might know. Okay, but I will throw in some episodes in the show notes that are relevant to this. if you wanted more conversations about people exploring their creativity, making peace with it, opening up to it, etc., etc. I've got at least 4 in mind right now.
Okay. Well, we're going to have plenty more for you on this topic then.
Okay. We will be back next Friday with a side chat. And I'm looking forward to it because it was inspired by chapter 7 of Forever Alone.
Okay. We'll see you then.
Bye.